Good morning. My name is Ken Dudek. I'm the president of Fountain House, and it is with extreme pleasure that we'd like to welcome you to the Healthier, Longer Lives for People with Serious Mental Illness. After me, you will hear from Betty Eastland, also from Fountain House, followed by a brief welcome from our conference partners and from the New York City Executive Deputy Commissioner of Health and Mental Hygiene, Gary Belkin. Gary, if you're out there, I think you need a shorter title. For 70 years, Fountain House has focused on the most serious forms of mental illness: schizophrenia, bipolar, and major depression. On the ground in more than 300 locations around the world are places created by and for people with these illnesses. People who, despite what many believe, affirm that there is hope, that there's recovery, and it is possible. That recovery in community is possible. The Healthier, Longer Lives Conference is designed by Fountain House and our partners at Columbia, citiesRISE, Grand Challenges Canada, with support from the World Health Organization, to ensure that our people with schizophrenia and bipolar, are not ignored, that our people who are but a whisper in the discussions about mental health, receive the attention and the resources from researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and investors that they deserve. Stakeholders from all these groups are in this auditorium today. We have renowned scientists, health ministers, elected officials, investors. We also have people with serious mental illness, many from places like Fountain House. We have all the ingredients to achieve the goal of this convening, which is to inspire action and to effect change. To do this, however, we must commit to working together during these 2 days and beyond to keep people with serious mental illness in the forefront of any and all dialogues about mental health. We must commit ourselves to finding solutions that help our people live not just healthier, longer lives, but fulfilling lives. Lives in which they realize that their potential as employees, students, neighbors, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers. In my 27 years at Fountain House, I've had the immense pleasure of watching thousands and thousands of people like Betty, who will speak to you now, not only achieve their goals, but also make invaluable contributions to our society. Thank you all for coming. Please join me in welcoming mental health advocate Betty Eastland.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Many years ago, I saw my life flash before my eyes. It wasn't because of a near-death experience. It was because of a diagnosis, a label that came with a heavy sentence. Hope was sucked out of my life. The ability to make friends or reach my goals was deeply affected, mostly because of discrimination and prejudice and internalized stigma that paralyzed me. Medication and therapy helped, but that wasn't what broke me free. It was finding people in a community, Fountain House, that believed I was not my illness, that I had unlimited potential. Fountain House and over 300 national and international clubhouses based on its model are communities that remove barriers created by institutional, social, and internalized stigma. Finding a place where I was valued and could give back my talents is what led me to be standing here in front of you as a person with a serious mental illness who also has a graduate degree in social work and is working to change a fragmented mental health system so that people can overcome the vast inequities we face. The dark truth is my people are dying 10, 15, 25 years too early, and it's not their fault. We can talk about sedentary lifestyles and poor diets, but that affects all populations. This cause is something larger. It resides in social determinants of health, which can include poverty, early childhood trauma, neighborhood disparity, and above all, discrimination. Even though the early death rate is staggeringly high for my community, I hear little about people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. We aren't advertised to, and even practitioners are wary of working with us, instead preferring people with depression and anxiety over those who experience hallucinations and delusions. We aren't thought of as redeemable. We aren't thought of as good prospects. The world doesn't believe in our ability to recover. So why another conference? Because we deserve it. Because we demand it. We are redeemable. We are worth the resources, research, and policy to overcome the significant disparities faced by people with mental illness. We want the chance to reach our full potential. We want the world to believe in us. And with your support, we can live healthier, longer lives.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Pike on the faculty at Columbia University, where I have the honor of serving as the director of our WHO Global Mental Health Collaborating Center. And I join this effort in establishing this conference because it's not because we need one more conference. It's because we need individuals from the many different perspectives on this issue to come together and to move beyond a research conference to a conference about hearing from all of the constituency groups that care about this essential issue. We live at a time when the easy questions have been answered and we're left with really complex, complicated, what some call wicked problems. And as researchers, our mandate must be to work closely with the many partners in order to understand what the current pressing issues are. The piece that we can contribute are the methodologies and the ways in which we can ask questions, the ways in which we can pose the questions so that we can build knowledge and move forward with real understanding and confidence in building programs and putting ideas into practice. This conference is essential from a research perspective because it is unlike most conferences. It's purposefully designed to bring together the many diverse ideas, each of us understanding a piece of the opportunities and the challenges to achieve healthier, longer lives for individuals with serious mental illness. Beyond outcomes, our opportunity as researchers is to help identify what works, what doesn't work, and why. And of course, basic science research continues to bring new understandings of the brain and brain disorders that should inform the work we do. By intimately connecting individuals with serious mental illness, family members, community members, healthcare providers, policymakers, and researchers, we can be more confident that the research questions we ask will be relevant, that they'll be posed appropriately, and that they will be framed in a way that is useful for individuals in real life. The essential value of research is the advancement of knowledge that will guide the development of programs and practices, inform the allocation of resources, those scarce resources. We don't want to spend them in ways that don't ultimately matter. So thanks. In the case of healthier, longer lives, many questions remain, and research programs that are well-informed and engaged by the community input, by the input of all of you here today, will be part of a better future. So thank you for joining us. I look forward to the program.
Hi, I'm Moitreyee Sinha. I'm the CEO of citiesRISE. It's a deep privilege to share the perspectives of many of you in the room, and especially bring here the voices of people with lived experiences and the communities that support them. The largest disparity in people's ability to lead healthy, long lives is not race, ethnicity, where they live, or their socioeconomic status. It's mental illness. Yet we live in a society today that is so advanced that in the morning when we look for our cup of coffee or we reach out for our smartphones, the world has figured out how to source the best beans, the most interesting innovations, how to shrink the world in terms of supply chains, and there are ways to bring all of these amazing innovations to market very rapidly. Yet, when we look at mental illness and humanity's largest need, we haven't yet collectively put all of our resources and collective energy together to do something very transformative here that is really, really critical. So the reason for this conference, from many of our perspective, is that urgent practical action, recognizing that the way the society is organized today, that millions of people fall through the cracks, not because there's not enough research and evidence. There has to be more, but there are many, many amazing areas of work that's already happening. There's social entrepreneurship, there's great policy, there are many, many different pockets of amazing work happening across the world, but we haven't yet figured out how to coordinate and how to bring all of these together in a very, very accelerated way. So over the next couple of days, what we hope to be doing is to bring many, many of these sectors together, and most importantly, right at the very center, make sure that we listen to the voices and the journeys of people with lived experiences and people, their peers, their families, their communities who are supporting them, and figure out how do we drive more collaborative work. And the whole purpose of this conference from the very beginning, as we were designing it, was that commitment for a collective responsibility, not just to share everything that's going on and then go away after 2 days and work in our respective silos, but to leave with a commitment towards actual practical action. So I hope that over the next couple of days that we will all use our respective resources, networks, to really break the kind of complacency that is there in today's society and make this moment a really, really pivotal point where we start turning the tide to come behind the lives of people with serious mental illness. Thank you.
Good morning. So my name is Gary Belkin, and I have the real honor to serve in this city as the Deputy Health Commissioner for Mental Health. And it's really a great pleasure to welcome you to New York City. Building off what Moitreyee said, what brings us here and what drives a lot of our work is appreciation that fighting inequity helps all of us. The disparities in our city, for example, in terms of educational attainment, maternal mortality, life expectancy, likelihood to be psychiatrically hospitalized, differ by zip code of birth, by zip code of residence, structured by race, by economic marginalization, by structural things that we create and therefore that we can change. And challenging ourselves as a society to take on those disparities, to take on those inequities, makes us look at the things that create a better community for everyone, facing up to the choices we make that make it harder for some of our citizens to live, helps all of us live better. What brings us here today, this notion that people with serious mental illness have a decade or more gap in mortality, premature mortality than the rest of the population, is frankly obscene. And it is obscene because it's largely a result of choices we make, of how we structure our world that drive these inequities. In New York City, we have tried, and we'll talk about in one of the panels a little later, to really live up to the reality of that picture. That if we want to take on the failures of the mental health system to address those inequities, we have to really re-engineer it. It's not tinkering, it's not new programs, it's really bringing all of government and all of society and all sectors to appreciate the fact of how much has to change to do it better and to start on that path. So I am here with as much to share as to learn about how we build a movement and share knowledge with that aspiration in mind, to really do the big work, the big scoped vision of what a new vision of mental health and therefore a new vision of equitable communities can look like. So welcome, and I appreciate you being here.
It's great to be here with you all. My name is Jeff Aron. I'm the Director of External Affairs at Fountain House. As a chief organizer of this conference, I've been really heartened by the extraordinary response to it from people and organizations from all over the world, people who are doing cutting-edge work, that you all feel the desire and the need to come from near and far to convene this extraordinary gathering is a testament to your leadership, your belief that something can be done to improve and extend the lives of people living with serious mental illness. It is a testament to hope and to the urgency and timeliness of this issue. When the World Health Organization and Fountain House began this process, we made a promise that the result of our collaboration would include the creation of policy and guidelines for health practitioners who work with people with serious mental illness, and it would be designed to inspire action and change policy. Today, as we launch the guidelines that emerged from this partnership, I want to acknowledge that this conference is an important step in realizing our vision. We believe and have been told by many that the excitement for this conference derives from its laser focus on schizophrenia, bipolar, and major depression. We share a commitment with all of you that serious mental illness will not remain in the shadows. This conference represents an opportunity to present science and best practice to policymakers and philanthropists, to demonstrate that there are solutions to the economic, social, and humanistic crisis that we face. This is reflected in the structure of the conference sessions. Each of the plenaries focuses on challenges and solutions to key issues such as integrated care, the role of cities, public-private partnerships, research priorities. And between each of the plenaries are parallel sessions in which you're going to have the opportunity to take a deeper dive in examining these issues. As well, there are spotlight presentations by some of the extraordinary leaders in the audience. The final session, The Way Forward, will focus on what we are going to do the day following the conference and in the weeks and months and years ahead, on our commitments as individuals and organizations. So I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you. Welcome to Healthier, Longer Lives for People Living with Serious Mental Illness. I particularly want to thank our partners, Fountain House, the Global Mental Health Program of Columbia, Grand Challenges Canada, and citiesRISE, who've been the coordinators and the active creators of this conference. And before we go on to the next session, I'm going to ask you all to stand and then leave the stage. I now have the honor of introducing Elyn Saks, who will be making our first spotlight presentation. I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that Elyn Saks is the personification and embodiment of why we are hosting this conference. Diagnosed with schizophrenia while in law school, she has gone on to achieve absolutely every recognition of brilliance that exists, including a MacArthur Genius Award. Elyn is the Orrin B. Evans Professor of Law, Psychology, and Psychiatry and the Behavioral Sciences at the University of Southern California Gould School of Law. She's an adjunct professor of psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine, and she's an assistant faculty at the New Center for Psychoanalysis. She's an elected member of the American Law Institute. Her book, The Center Cannot Hold, My Journey Through Madness, has won numerous honors, including New York Times Extended Bestsellers List, Time Magazine Top 10 Nonfiction Book of the Year Award, and Books for a Better Life Inspirational Memoir Award. Elyn is a dear friend of Fountain House and of many, many of us in this audience. Personally, what inspires me most about her is how she has tirelessly employed her intellect, her passion, and compassion to advocate for the humane treatment of all people with serious mental illness everywhere. It is a great, great pleasure to welcome Elyn Saks.
So I'm not sure if I have a mic, a lavalier or a regular one. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So, as Jeff said, thank you, Jeff, for that kind introduction. I also like to shout out a thanks to George Handren, who couldn't be here today, but who has been a generous, visionary philanthropist supporting both the Fountain House and my Sachs Institute for Mental Health, Law, Policy, and Ethics. My name, as you know, is Elyn Saks, and I'm delighted to speak at this Fountain House event called Healthier, Longer Lives. This is an important, indeed, a critical topic. We need to find ways to interrupt, to reverse the phenomenon that people with mental health disorders die on average 10 to 25 years earlier than people without mental health disorders. Hope does exist for people with SMI, not only to live healthier and longer lives, but also to live good and happy and productive lives. After sketching out my own struggles with mental illness, and indeed with physical illness too, I will discuss the phenomenon of early death in my population, why it exists, and what we can do about it. So, again, about myself, I'm a woman with chronic schizophrenia. I've spent hundreds of days in psychiatric hospitals. I could have ended up living most of my life on the back ward of a hospital, but things turned out quite differently. After my third psychiatric hospitalization as a young woman, my doctors gave me a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia and a prognosis of, quote, grave. I was supposed to spend my entire life in a board and care and maybe work at a minimum wage job when my symptoms were quiet. That's not how my life turned out. I'm a chair, tenured professor of law at a top-ranked law school, namely USC. Indeed, I was recently made a distinguished professor, which there are only a few of, and I was very honored. Adjunct professor. So adjunct professor of psychiatry at UCSD Medical School and on the faculty for the New Center for Psychoanalysis, as you have already heard. I'm also the director of the Sachs Institute for Mental Health, Law, Policy, and Ethics. I've been awarded a MacArthur, quote, Genius Grant. I have a beloved husband and many good friends, and I'd like to share with you my story. There's actually a funny story with the MacArthur. So my school gave me a lovely reception, and I had a T-shirt with Einstein, a picture of Einstein and a picture of me, and it said, only one of us is a certified genius, to which I replied I'd been certified many times in the past, but not in this way. First, just what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a brain disease whose defining feature is psychosis, a profound loss of connection to reality. Delusions and hallucinations are hallmarks of the illness. Delusions are fixed beliefs that one holds to despite all evidence to the contrary, and hallucinations are false sensory perceptions. For example, when I'm psychotic, I sometimes believe I've killed hundreds of thousands of people with my thoughts, or at other times that nuclear explosions are going to be set off in my brain. I see things that aren't there, such as a man with a knife threatening me. For the person with schizophrenia, these thoughts and sensory experiences are real. That man with the knife was as real to me as I am to you sitting in your seats. Often speech and thinking become disorganized to the point of incoherence. Loose association, where one associate words that sound alike but are not at all connected, and word salad, where words are just jumbled all together in an incoherent manner, are also symptoms of schizophrenia. To me, so an example would be I was breaking down on the roof of the Yale Law School and told my classmates, are you having the same experience of words jumping around the cases as I am? And then I said, we've got to case the joint. I don't believe in joints, but they do hold your body together. So they're connected, but don't really make sense. And to me, the best analogy to a psychotic episode is a nightmare, sort of a waking nightmare with all the bizarre images, the impossible things happening, and the utter terror. Only with a nightmare, you can sit up in bed, open your eyes, and it all goes away, and no such luck with a psychotic episode. Schizophrenia also has what are called negative symptoms: apathy, amotivation, inability to work, inability to sustain relationships. Much of the personal and societal burden of schizophrenia resides in these negative symptoms. I've been fortunate that, except for the first 2 years I was ill, I've been spared these malignant negative symptoms. So I want to, give an example of something that happened to me when I was ill, and this was when I had broken down on the roof of the Yale Law School, taken to the ER by my professor, and I found myself in a small private room waiting for my doctor, and the attendant was kind. He was really big though, but he was kind, and I readily gave him my telephone wire belt, which I had proudly made earlier in the day after starting to snap it through the air, quoting from the text. But you can't have my 6-inch nail, I said, patting my pocket. Then someone I'll call just the doctor arrived. Give that to me, he said. No, I said. He immediately called for security. Another attendant came in, this one not so nice. Once he pried the nail from my fingers, I knew I was done for. Within seconds, the doctor and his whole team of goons swooped down, grabbed me, lifted me out of the chair, and slammed me down in a nearby bed with such force that I saw stars. Then they bound both my legs and arms to the metal bed with thick leather straps. A sound came out of my mouth that I'd never heard before. Half groan, half scream, barely human, and pure terror. Then the sound came again, forced from somewhere deep inside my belly and scraping my throat raw. No, I shouted, stop this, don't do this to me. I glanced up to see a face watching the entire scene through the window of the steel door. Why was she watching me? Who was she? I was an exhibit, a specimen, a bug impaled on a pin and helpless to escape. Please, I begged, please, this is like something from the Middle Ages, please, no, ending the passage. 5 months of hospitalization ensued, involving long-term restraints and seclusion. Actually, in my medical records, there was a notation, use restraints liberally. I was forcibly medicated at times and had little privacy. In the beginning, I was watched even as I went to the bathroom and took a shower, and I could not have a conversation with anyone outside the presence of staff, including with my parents. I do believe that the hands-off approach that I experienced in England, which might even be called benign neglect, was much preferable to the over-interventionist posture of the American hospitals. As I've come to say, I'm very pro-psychiatry, but very anti-force. So again, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia and given a grave prognosis, expected to be unable to live independently, let alone work. But I managed to evade that grave prognosis, and I think that's for 3 reasons. First, excellent care, 4 to 5 day a week psychoanalytic psychotherapy for decades and continuing. I've been trained, the theory is it's supposed to end, but I'm a lifer, I don't want to risk stopping. Excellent psychopharmacology. It took me a while to realize that I really needed to stay on the meds, but once I did, my life got better. Second, wonderfully supportive family and friends. these people give my life a richness and a depth, and they also serve as another set of eyes. And prime among my relationships is with my husband, Will. So when I dated normally in high school and college, but when I became ill, that went by the wayside. I didn't have a date for 18 years. And then Will and I started going out and kidded it around that we married in our 40s and we just skipped the first marriage, but he's a really great guy. And then the third thing is an accommodating and stimulating workplace. So when I'm writing an argument or a counter argument, the crazy stuff recedes to the sidelines, and I get great gratification out of being productively in a scholarly way. As I've come to say, my mind is both my best friend and my worst enemy. I want to say two other things. That I've described psychosis, but I've really described my psychosis. Everybody becomes psychotic in her or his own way. And it would be great to have other stories telling what it's like to have this so that people can understand more. And I also want to say that I've had all the resources. I had enough resources that I could see my therapist 5 days a week and have an excellent psychopharmacologist, and most people can't do that. So I have people in an audience saying, you know, I can afford to give my patient 15 minutes every 3 months. You see someone every day. How on earth is my patient supposed to do as well? And I say, you're totally right. And I even have some survivor guilt around that, but I'm not going to stop taking it. Okay. So I want now to look more at this particular conference. So as we've heard, mentally ill people die on average 10 to 25 years earlier than people who don't have mental illness. Why this is the case should really be seriously studied. I can think of a bunch of probable contributing factors. People with mental health disorders smoke more than people in the general population. I've seen the figure 3 times as often, and that's obviously smoking is bad for your physical health. Second, medications lead many with serious mental illness to gain significant weight, and that can compromise physical health. So I've heard, for example, with clozapine, which is what I'm on, people gain on average 12 to 14 pounds in the first year. Also, people with mental illness, the medications cause other potential problems, like, you know, kidney problem with people with lithium and heart, and white blood count for people with schizophrenia. And also people with mental illness sort of decline often in socioeconomic status, and that causes impairments as well. Also, many people with SMI do not have good access to physical health care. A friend of mine on disability seemed to have findings indicating cirrhosis, but could not get another appointment for six months. So I intervened and made that happy sooner, but not everyone has such an advocate in their life. It's also the case that people with mental illness are assumed at times to be not really physically ill. They're just somatizing their mental health issues. I'm a prime example. I was taken to the ER by friends when they found me incoherent and with no memory. I kept asking over and over why they were there. At the ER, a predictable disaster occurred. The doctors found my psychiatric chart and decided I was just having an episode, even though my friends were jumping up and down, waving their arms, saying, we've seen her psychotic many times in the past, and that's not what this looks like. But I was a mental patient. They sent me back home, and a few days later, my doctor sent me back, and they looked like they were about to send me home again when they asked me to touch my toes with my hands over my head, which hurt. So they did a spinal tap and discovered that I was having a, quote, subarachnoid hemorrhage, a bleed in my brain, which kills about 50% of people who get it. I'm glad I didn't know that, because I would have had a heart attack. But I was just a mental patient. A client of a psychologist friend of mine kept going from doctor to doctor, complaining of back pain. He kept being told it was psychosomatic. Finally, one doctor did a back x-ray and discovered he had a broken back, but he was just a mental patient. One final point about physical health care. As I understand it, there was a time in Germany where the state subsidized intensive psychotherapy, and what they found, as I understand, was that utilization of physical health care went way down. People didn't have to somatize as much. And I'd also like to mention, though, that I have also, in addition to subarachnoid hemorrhage, I've also had 3 cancers over 4 times. So breast in 99, thyroid in 2010, parotid in 2016, another breast cancer in 2018. I seem to have a knack of attracting cancers, but also of beating them, and I mean to continue the latter. So that's something I've struggled with as well. Thank you. So proper mental health care is also, of course, extremely important. When I asked my collaborator, Steve Martyr, a schizophrenia expert at UCLA, with whom I'm studying high-functioning people with schizophrenia, what patients with schizophrenia, with high-functioning schizophrenia in our sense, namely professional, managerial, technical, et cetera, and he said the real question is not how many people are, but how many could be if we devoted appropriate resources. And I think that's exactly the right answer. So what can we do about physical challenges of people with mental health disorders? I think a flagship program is right here. Visionary philanthropist George Handren, who I hope is able to watch this, of the Sidney Bear Foundation, has funded a physical health clinic right next door to Fountain House so that the Fountain House members can get the physical health care that they need. I'm hopeful that this can be studied and can spur other groups to do the same. So I think as consumers and providers, we should aim at not only surviving, but at thriving. We want long, healthy, and good and happy and productive lives too. Fountain House, as well as Dr. Ralph Aquila himself, is a beacon of hope for people with mental illness and their families. This program helps people with mental health disorders, again, to lead full, happy, and productive lives. We should applaud them and give them great thanks for what they do. I know I do. Thank you.